Welcome to the 2021 BFA Senior Thesis Conversations series. My name is James Goebel. I am hosting this with Brian Connolly, also here. I am painting and drawing faculty at California College of the Arts. Before we get started with tonight's events, I would like to let you know that this event will be recorded and posted publicly to YouTube. If you do not feel comfortable being recorded, please take this moment to change your name as it appears on Zoom and/or turn off your cameras. Also, please make sure that your Zoom connection and your microphone has been muted during the presentation. I would like to first start with a land acknowledgement. California College of the Arts campuses are located in the Hichuan and Yaluma, also known as Oakland and San Francisco, respectively, on the unceded territories of Chochenyo and Ramaytush Ohlone peoples who have continuously lived upon this land since time immemorial. We recognize the historic discrimination and violence inflicted upon Indigenous peoples in California and the Americas, including their forced removal from ancestral lands and the deliberate and systematic destruction of their communities and culture. CC honors Indigenous peoples past, present, and future here and around the world. And we wish to pay respect to local elders, including those of the lands from which you are joining us virtually today. If you are unsure of whose lands you are currently residing upon, we encourage you to visit native-land.ca. Today, we're celebrating the work of 4 graduating fine arts students. Each of the seniors will give a 10-minute presentation introducing their work. After each presentation, our guest respondents will have a 10-minute conversation with each student, providing feedback and asking them questions. Please note that we won't have time during this event for a public Q&A, but we encourage all of our attendees to drop comments and affirmations for the seniors in the Zoom chat. The chat transcript will be saved at the end of this event and will be sent to the seniors as a sort of virtual guest book. Before we get started, I would like to quickly introduce our guest respondents today. Leila Weefur, pronouns he, they, she, is an artist, writer, curator based in Oakland, California. Through video and installation, their interdisciplinary practice examines the performativity intrinsic to systems of belonging. The work brings together concepts of sensorial memory, abject blackness, hypersurveillance, and the erotic. Weefur is a recipient of the Walter and Elise Haas Creative Work Fund and the MSP California Black Voices Project. They have worked with local and national institutions, including the Wattis Institute, the McAvoy Foundation, Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Film Archive, SF MoMA, Museum of the African Diaspora, and Smackmillan. Weefur's work has been published in Seen by Black Star Productions, Sming Books, Base Journal, and more. Weefur is also currently a lecturer at Stanford University. Welcome. Our second respondent today is Taro Hattori. Taro is an interdisciplinary artist whose work has shown, who has shown his installations socially engaged process across the United States and in other parts of the world. His recent work often creates relationships between physical sculpture and space with people of a specific socio-political background through their performances, conversations, and singing. He is a recent recipient of a creative grant, Creative Work Fund grant, and additionally, the Phyllis C. Wattis Foundation, California Arts Council, Art Matters Foundation New York, Zellerbach Foundation, the Center for Cultural Innovation, just to name a few. He has been awarded numerous residencies and fellowships, including the Headland Center for the Arts, Montalvo Art Center, Jurassic Resident Artist Program, and the Jiayang Museum and Kandu Art Museum in Taiwan. I want to thank both of you so much for your time this evening and joining us as respondents for today's event. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the first of our 4 graduating seniors, Chinasa Porter. Chinasa, will you share your screen for us?
Yes, thank you. Okay, give me one moment. Okay. Okay, so thank you all for being here. My name is Chinasa Porter. I am a community artist from Oakland, California. And this afternoon, I will be sharing some of my most recent work. I believe that the time lag between the colonial and the post-colonial can be conceptualized as the decolonial imaginary, a rupturing space, the alternative to that which is written history, that interstitial space where differential politics and social dilemmas are negotiated. If the colonial imaginary hides something, then the decolonial imaginary, teetering in a third space, recognizes what is left out. Inspired by Perez's theorization of the concept of the decolonial imaginary, in my work, I interrogate the colonial imaginary through the embodying of my own social and spiritual imaginaries, holding and creating space for the areas of which the intersections of my identity as a Black queer woman exist. In constant relationship and communication with the eternal, with ritual practice regarding death and dying, with my ancestral veneration practices, I imagine and I act upon a livable future to be free and to exist in a world full of Black ass, free ass people. My artistic practice is guided by this inquiry and prayer. How do we use the vast wisdom and embodied practices of our ancestors and living kin, human and non-human, as instruments for liberation? I am a woman, indigenous, and who I am cannot be found. There is no Old English to define me, no country to mark my origin on a map, no DNA test to categorize me mixed, no museum to reteach me African, no dialect to delegitimize my language. I am indigenous to land that created all people. There is nothing about me that is incomplete. There is nothing to search for, nothing to reclaim, nothing to want. I am real. And so my creative practice is theoretically guided by Christina Sharp's conceptual understanding of the afterlives of chattel slavery and the multiplicities and consciousness around Blackness and being of this world while simultaneously existing in multiple timelines. What has had the capacity to survive despite generations of violence? What exists and what has been created in the wake of slave ships, human traffickers, sexual abuse and torture, state violence, and having to experience the continuous loss of your own people? My practice explores the worlds I inhabit being both Black and a woman and queer, which I would argue that being both Black and a woman makes a person inherently queer. But in the in-between state, or what W.E.B. Du Bois's theory of double consciousness, that situates me within many realities that through my practice, I am able to intersect. I grapple with the realities of living in a body that was, is, but is not colonized. This performance is titled Pledge Allegiance to Destroy and was performed as an action during the Black Mass Festival in Oakland during the wake of the murder of Breonna Taylor. Through guerrilla theater tactics, we immerse the space in a call of action, asking the audience to either place one hand on the ground as an acknowledgement of both the earth and the dead, or a hand to the heart. This piece was more of a collective prayer than a theatrical performance, as we offered the audience to feel what it means within the body to be in allegiance to the end of a colonial empire, to be in allegiance to the dismantling of systems of violence and control that have and continue to desecrate life, to desecrate the earth, and to desecrate specifically Black and Indigenous people. We ended this piece with another call to action. offering the audience another prayer, something to take with them. The revolution will be embodied, was screamed, sung, and cried as we all spoke life into each other, specifically in a time of immense grief, as a reminder that our deepest movements exist as a corporeal experience, as an action, as ritual. Lineage is the foundation for all of my art practices. Specifically in this work, it is the blood, root, and bones of how I embody the power of those that are no longer living. Altars have always existed in my life ever since I can remember. My mother is a practitioner of Ifa, an ancestral veneration practice and veneration of the Orishas, which are nature's forces. I learned to build altars to remember, to uplift, and to grieve. This living, moving work, titled Altar for Black Life, Past, Present, and Future, is another socially engaged piece built specifically for the Black Mass Festival in Oakland. Inspired by Jenny Holzer's provocative and demanding inflammatory essays, this series of manifestos speaks directly to the viewers and the worlds they inhabit, reminding the public that they have a role in this unfolding, that we are in constant communication with each other, that the role does not simply lie in the act of observation, but to participate in a larger theorizing of concepts, to be active participants in the unfolding of ideas central to the practice of decolonizing and the practice of laying to rest extractive systems, the practice of deconstruction. I understand words as spellbound once we cast them out into the world. These posters are prayers, offerings of questions, a small part of this world where participants can find moments to question, to argue, to write down notes, to pray, to cry, to find inspiration after speaking the words into existence, asking questions like, what worlds will we create once we lay this old world to rest? What will we bring with us from the old world? And what does that synthesizing process entail? What will we do? I'm interested in how the public interacts with these manifestos, with these calls to action as they belong to the public. I want these moments of creative refuge and inquiry to interrogate the colonial imaginary and bring back people's agency to define a world that has capacity to sustain life. I want to help create the bones for a world that can hold us and that can propel us through these processes of late-stage capitalism and climate catastrophe into a time that reflects the answers to all of these questions. So a few questions that I inquire upon in this quilt titled Quilting Through the Memory of Bodies that ties into my final project includes what has created, shaped, and moved my lineage? What has the weaving process of my DNA story entailed? Where do I come from and what comes from me? And how does it embody itself through texture, color, and text? Through the theme of ancestral veneration, passing down oral history, and reclaiming stories that were once left out, I memorialize the embodied language of my Black ancestors in the South who evaded the archives through quilting legacies and other corporeal practices used for protection, survival, remembrance, and liberation. This work recognizes the importance of Black people naming our own histories and futures as they exist and have existed within the body. The history of storytelling was etched in Black quilt patterns during a time where Black folks were not only using their creative capacities to escape to freedom, but intentionally evading the archives. Through quilting, Black people were able to sustain their history and stories as they were webbed into textiles as offerings for family and community members and passed down generation to generation. Black folks throughout our time here in this place called America have and continue to challenge the notion that our history has been erased. Yes, we were not included in the archival process, but that was intentional. The assumption that our histories and stories do not exist, and specifically that we cannot tell our own stories, is anti-Black and a further colonial tactic. Our stories are the stories of survival and resurgence, and they are all of our stories. Black people are of the body, we are of the future, and we are of the land. And we use storytelling in almost every aspect of our experience. Movement, song, craft, theory. We tell the histories and futures of the earth. And so in my final installation project titled Memory of the Earth, I create a structure specific to commemorating and communicating and communing with our dead. A ceremonial space where participants can experience an alternative way to commune with the dead, specifically their ancestors, human and non-human. I am weaving in my own histories of ancestral veneration practices, of altar making and offerings, as well as funerary practices of my enslaved ancestors who used things like memory jars and the planting of periwinkle flowers to mark their deceased, specifically in a time where it was forbidden to honor their dead. The structure will consist of a ceiling and a base. The base will have a small ramp attached, guiding participants into what is built to be representative of an unmarked grave plot. So it will be covered with soil. The walls of the structure will be covered in blue and white colored fabric to mark the space as protected and guided by Yemaya, the Yoruba deity of the ocean, and a mother to us all, as well as floor-length fabric printed with portraits of my deceased relatives. Underneath the soil is a 5 by 5 foot quilt that I've been working on, and that's also in the previous slide, that consists of memory jars filled with family heirlooms, herbs significant to my own veneration practices like bay leaves, magnolia flowers, seawater and seashells, and periwinkle flowers. Around the structure will be large vessels of water and fruit and sweets to feed the dead. This installation is one big ancestor altar. It's placed into the public for participants to engage in their own understanding of questions like, what are the stories of our lineages kept deep inside of the earth? Specifically those of us that descend from enslavement and colonial terror. What does it mean to sit at our altar and commune with our dead? What does it feel within the body to publicly grieve our dead? It is also a social experiment because I'm interested in how people interact with the space that is so often in our culture here in the West been an isolated affair. What does it mean to hold grief ceremonies in public place? How does that alter our collective spatial reality? How does that alter what we understand a city to look and feel like? And how does it free us? And so I invite all of you to join me in the opening of this project on December 8th through the 10th in the Oliver Gallery on the Oakland campus. And just many thanks to the forces that guide me, all of the forces that guide me to feel, to inquire, and to act. I truly am because we are. And thank you. Thank you for listening and being here.
Thank you, Chinasa. Now I'd like to invite Leila and Taro to respond to Chinasa's work.
Please, Leila, go ahead.
Sure. Chinasa, thank you for a wonderful presentation. I enjoyed seeing your work tonight. I really love how deeply poetic your presentation was. There is a cadence and rhythm to the way that you speak, which to me connects beautifully back to and is evidence of your interest in like an oratory history. The use of prayer and speech and bringing that back into performance. And it reminded me of a quote from Fred Moten's In the Break. Are you familiar with In the Break?
I'm not familiar with In the Break, no.
Okay, I will put that in the chat if I may, but it's In the Break, the aesthetics of the Black radical tradition. And I won't say the quote verbatim, but he says something like blackness marks simultaneously the performance of the object and the performance of humanity. And I think that reflected your work to me when I was seeing your work. I love that you are reframing the rules of engagement in some way through collective prayer as a decolonial movement towards dismantling. I love how deeply personal your practice is, down to material explorations in your practice, like the flora the soil, the photographs, and the writing, connecting all back to your ancestral history. And I love bringing it back to language every time. I think language seems like a huge cornerstone in your work, and your writing is strong. And it reminded me, if I may say, not exactly, but I really think a couple of the artists that stood out in my mind, if you're unfamiliar with them, is Tao Lewis and Pritika Rajgaraya. The subjects are slightly different. The histories are obviously very different, but I think speaks to this like collective thought happening with, I don't know, like textile work connecting back to the body and family history. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chinasa. It was really moving, and especially, yeah, as Leila said, this connection between your beautiful writing and also this physical representation, and also the including people, your community members into the activating the objects that you create, and also the language that you produced also, which was really, really moving. And especially, thank you so much for letting us understand the route you came through by presenting the kind of, all the work, and then how those elements kind of started coming together into the recent work. Especially, I am so excited to see that future plan of this memory of the art installation piece, which will be super amazing. Like, I started thinking about Jeffrey Gibson's monument that he created in the park in New York. That was the Socrates Park, and he invited other people to perform, etc. So it seems to be the space you're creating is the place that community members can gather, and then especially you are dealing with this death, and also this belief in the lineage, and how we can actually come together for our ancestors, but also to bind the people today together. So yeah, I'm curious about, this is kind of like a question, but I'm curious about what type of action that you are thinking about having in that installation, and how the viewers or the people, for me, for example, how we can actually participate in it. And do you have any idea about that?
Well, I think that I set the tone. The space itself sets the tone for people to engage with it in the ways in which they feel called to. Like, I don't think that I'm precisely creating a space that is that doesn't require for participants, and this is why I say participants and not viewers, because it's a relationship that is being built between the work and between people's own experiences. I want people to engage with these feelings. I want people to engage with whatever they're coming with, and I really see it as a space where people can sit and be in the elements, like underneath their feet is the soil, and to move with where and with what comes up with that experience. Like, I'm more interested in witnessing how people participate and interact, which I think is a larger theme with the work that I do, in terms of, socially engaged art. I'm also just like witnessing, like, how are people engaging? because I think that I'm interested as an artist, how do I create spaces where people can exist differently and move differently, and be more embodied. So that's what I'm hoping that this structure, this experience, this altar can offer people.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chinasa, and thank you both respondents. That was really wonderful. All right. I will invite you to screen share, Chinasa.
Oh, I'm not screen sharing anymore.
Oh, you're not? Oh, okay. No, then that's on me. Never mind. I apologize. Our next presenter is Sherry Xiang. Please welcome Sherry.
Hi everybody, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. My name's Sherry, and I'm also a community art major, graduating this semester, and my senior thesis is about tree talks. And my name is called, a Chinese name is Xinquan, which means spring water from heart. This is also one of my key of my life that I try to experience inwardly to myself and finding the truth about myself and also the world while exploring about myself. And I really believe in my statement that my life is a love story, a love affair. That is my story, a life in which my heart possesses no sense of self. I was meditating by a waterfall when suddenly I could not perceive my heartbeat, as hard as I searching for it, as if a sense of levitating calmness impregnated my soul. My heart was no longer part of my physical presence, but a spiritual tunnel that connects with everything, manifesting an interrelationship between every and one, is Mama Gaia. She's the river that flows in your arteries and veins, in the wind that fills every breath, and the mountain of our skeleton structures. But our ignorance led our ego to narcissistically deny such existence, ergo fabricating a sense of loneliness. We've been blent because in the presence of immense love, we thrust a dagger of cowards into the eyes. The universe is a magical and complex web in which we are the co-characters. If we develop a thought in mind, it resonates and reveals itself in the universe. As an artist, I use all my tools to apprehend emergence, connection, and creativity of the world. I am conscious of bringing ineffable interrelationship and benevolent love through my art. And this is the waterfall that I was meditating at. Talking about my influences, one of my favorite documentary is called My Octopus Teacher. I really is inspired. My entire project of my senior show is inspired by him, which he talked to an octopus and watching him every day. And I think that it really let go of my human-centric ego and to know another species, be curious about our other creatures and amazed by their talent. Another artist that I really like is Spacio Salgardo. In his autobiography documentary Le Sel de la Terre, he is not only introducing his photos, but it also has a really appealing story, which the farm that he grew up with, because of climate change, it almost turned into a desert. But somehow he, with his will, is willing to plant trees in his farmland. And in 30 years, they turn in the desert into a forest again. I think that really gives me hope about like how to change the environment and how as an artist what we can do. Another sculpture that artist that I really liked is definitely Vangachi Mutu. I went to see her exhibitions in Legion of Honor and felt almost cried because there's this a really primitive sense of an energy flow in her project, which she really deliberate that the Mama Gaia's power and women power and something really wonderful penetrates her sculpture. Talking about my past work, one of the work it's called Green Vote. It happens in the election year, which I invited my community and my friends to collect fallen leaves, and we weave it into a huge vote sign in the burnt hill of Vacaville and ask people to vote for the environment. And here's the video. Another work that I did is called Plan Whisper with Peter Xie. We actually made an Arduino cord, which we will send the signals to the plants. And the plants will react on the signals and reflect it back to my Arduino board. And we turn those signals into sound so that in this technical way, we can hear plant whisper. Yeah, that's it.
We actually didn't hear the sound. Is that correct? Or
Sorry.
does it supposed to play sound?
Sorry about that. Yeah. Hear it now?
Yes.
And there's another community arts work that I did. It's called Singing Bowl Series. I always believe in moon energy and the healing power of the moon. So in every full moon, I would go to before the COVID, I would go to different places in the Bay Area and inviting the audience to play singing bowls with me. They would come and go eventually and play a chord to heal their body and the environment. And last but not least, it's a work that I have been doing this semester. It's called Tree Talks. It's a series of video diarizing the intercourse between the artist and the community of redwood trees from Muirwood National Monument, aiming to transcend the boundaries between humans and trees and to search for a sense of belonging in Mother Nature. Week by week, the artists meditate by the redwood and record the progress of their interrelationships. Oh. Sorry.
Take it away, Taro.
Oh, I thought you're playing something on, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. September 26th, meditation and prayers. I have been practicing them for a week. to finally begin my search for the redwoods. All seemed familiar about the forest, but I couldn't make out any single tree. As luck would have it, nature's mysterious way always led behind clues. As I tried to send my gift to them, my instinct called me to throw it into the river. I suppose they wanted to share it, for all of them are symbiotes in a community. No wonder I could not pick out one out of many. So I set myself down to focus. There was nothing, not a word or an image. After a while, I asked them, "Are we friends now?" Appeared in my head with this powerful sound. The bound is always there and will always be. October 2nd. I could neither concentrate nor hear a word. Stuck in my head were thousands of questions and curiosities, and they were neither answered nor satisfied. I felt like the redwood with their tremendous wisdom bothered not with my ignorance. Taking a stroll in the forest, I caught the word contemplate with my ears, and by the power of focusing to tune into my body, my relentless ego finally fell silent. All I could hear was the rhythm of my body harmonizing with the melody of Mama Gaia. I finally felt the romance of the trees. By wind, they splashed their leaves onto the canvas of terra firma. During the week, I was frustrated by the feebleness of human spirit, ignorant but arrogantly stubborn, and the chain of loneliness handcuffed my neck. Death was all I could think of. But when I close my eyes, I feel my friends again. I feel them dancing around me to connect my empty heart. Finally, my life was breathing. So this is actually a series of 8 weeks diary, and I'm just showing 2 of them because of time. And yeah, this is my senior show. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sherry.
Sorry for the technique problem.
No problem. It was a delight to see the work. Now I'd like to invite Leila and Taro to talk about Sherry's work.
Okay, can I go, Leila? Sherry, thank you so much for sharing this amazing series of work. And I was so impressed that, and also congratulations for your graduation. And then I worked with you once when you're taking my class, and I still remember how your thinking process, and then I can see that thinking process in every bit of your work as well, which was really amazing, which is kind of this very interesting, unique connection between kind of huge idea and also by introducing this huge idea, you're trying to somehow decentralizing this kind of human-centric culture or the civilization that we have been creating, which is kind of failing, but you're trying to somehow shift this direction by introducing several interesting big ideas. So I really love that approach. And then for doing it, you always try to use very creatively some like interesting technologies or the mathematics and processing and coding, etc. So yeah, it's always exciting to see how you try to apply those rather technical human invented device for the purpose of kind of like taking out this human ego out of our culture and then be with nature. So especially the final one, you pick up the redwood. You know, I have I didn't grow up here, right? So that's why redwood was not part of my life. But the having lived here for more than 10 years now. And I started feeling this kind of sympathy to redwood itself and how it grows. And then actually how different individual like redwood trees share resources, and then big red tree actually distribute resources to smaller redwood, etc. So that kind of like a network that we didn't know going on actually there, and then you try to be part of it. So that is another big idea that you try to, you know, take into our to criticize how kind of like, you know, this human life every day has been really busy doing this, that, and that, such small things we worry about future, etc. But by introducing such huge idea, it gives me like the sense of hope. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry, for your presentation. It was very enjoyable. I have 2 books to recommend, just like straight off the bat. The first one is a child's book, and it's called The Other Way to Listen by Bird Taylor. And it's one of my favorite children's books because it's about a parent and a child in the desert, and the child is teaching the adult how to listen to and respond to everything around them. And it really reminded me of that book when I was listening to your video just now. But I love the focus here on trees and nature. Tree roots are very rhizomatic, and I love, it's something that Taro said about the connectedness and the network. It made me think about ways that you might continue building a network or ecosystem of some sort that might feed back into the rhizomatic nature of trees. Something that the sound bowl, excuse me, because I won't remember exactly, but the sound bowl project reminded me of that. And it, you know, the ways that your practice can be also like participatory, and I won't call it performative, but calling back to this nature of tree behavior or plant behavior. I also really love the focus on sound and the auditory experience of land, and I don't know, calling on our bodies to being more in tune with nature in that way is really beautiful. And that reminded me of the second book that I want to recommend, which is David Abram, The Spell of the Sensuous. It's another one of my favorite books, but there was a quote in your video where you said, "Are we friends now?" I think in response to the tree, and it reminded me of David Abram's book. And he's a philosopher of nature and a shaman. And that book is really talking about how all things are connected, and the practice of relearning how to respond to and live with all things animate, because we tend to forget as people in the world that everything is animate in a way, and paying attention to the macro and the micro parts of life. So I really appreciated your presentation. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sherry. And thank you to Taro and Leila for all these really insightful comments. Now I would like to introduce our next presenter, which is Anna Hazopoulos.
All right, cool. I'll share my screen with you guys. Okay, cool. Just to introduce myself a little bit, my name is Anna. I am an individualized major with a computational practices minor. And just to talk about my practice a little bit, I am an animator, a filmmaker, and an illustrator. And all of these things kind of combine together to, you know, make it do what I do. All right, so always treasure, well, before I read this, I'm going to be showcasing my current work and my current work progress and what I've been doing for the entirety of this year, and just what I'm working on to completing, which is going to be completed in time for the show. So always treasure the time you have with those that you love. Time waits for no one. 1 minute you're 4 and the next day you're 21. Days go by and you see those you love get older and older, and you never know when their time may end. This is the story of Ruby and her grandma, a perfect representation of how time flies by with the snap of your fingers. Ruby is a nature-loving little girl with a very outgoing personality, extremely loud, and makes her wants and needs well known. Her grandmother is more wise, calm, and is clearly getting old, but this doesn't sit well with Ruby. The film encapsulates her last moments with her grandmother and what can happen with the snap of your fingers. So the film is entitled The Cicada and Its Mantis, and I am actually working in a group for this project with 2 other animation majors, since this is animated, and this is more just to show some work in progress. This is going to be very experimental, so it uses 3 different types of medium, and I'll be showing that. So I actually also included my sketchbook in this, and the reason why I included my sketchbook is because it kind of my sketchbook did a really good job with helping me produce these ideas, and kind of just making everything come to life for me. So I'll be showing that. And then my sketchbook includes some of my previous work. So this is a lot of earlier work combined with a lot of present work, if that makes sense. So just and I used this a lot to practice and kind of practice body movement, which is really necessary for what I'm doing with this project. And it overall really aided with developing everything. So just to show the more technical side of things, these are my models. So this is the main character, and her name is Ruby. And I started working on this project December 2019. So this has been in progress for a really, really long time. And I started working on Ruby January 2020 when I first developed the idea of this character. And this took me about 6 months to produce. And then what I did was I took her underlying body, which I made from scratch, and I built, or not built, but modeled the grandmother. And this one took me a month to make, for sure. And then here's the praying mantis, which is another key character in this film. I also I did the anatomy, and I modeled this from scratch too. And here's one of the sceneries that I did. I also modeled all of this by myself. There's some stuff that I did purchase, like the dining room table, but everything else was done by me. The couch, the hourglass, the tables, or some of the tables, some of the furniture. Okay, so here's the stop motion component. I actually fabricated these dolls myself as well. I do a lot of crochet work, and I wanted to incorporate that in my film because crochet is a big part of who I am and who I am as an artist. So this is one of the dolls that I made. This is the stop motion version of Ruby. And next one is going to be the stop motion version of the grandmother. And again, I fabricated everything. I sewed the clothes. I did the skeleton. Everything was done by me. And then here's actually some of the stop motion progress that I think would be really interesting to show. It's just a small clip, and then this transitions to something even bigger. Oh, to a story that's even bigger, which is going to be the bedtime story told in my film. I'm actually going to be showing that at the end, so you guys will get a better understanding of what I'm talking about. And then I thought something else that was interesting was the lettering, because the lettering on my poster that I showed while I said my my artist statement, I also crocheted the letters, and I edited it to make it look like it was text from a computer, computer generated text, and put it in the poster. And then last but not least, here is the film progress. I'll show you all of it just so you can see what it looks like so far, but it is projected to be done in time for the senior show. Let me know if you can hear it.
I don't think we hear the sound.
Here, let me. One second. How do you share sound? Here we go. Oh boy. I don't, it's gonna have me restart my computer if I want to share sound. I mean, what should I do? Should I restart my?
Give us a description of what the sound is like and then play the clip.
Yeah, okay, cool. So I'll just talk over the film then. So essentially right now it's just it's very minimal dialogue. I did it this way because I'm not a fan of too much dialogue. But it's mainly sound effects, just footsteps and.
Hi, Grandma.
There, the sound is up.
Okay, cool.
Grandma, can you read me a story? No, not today, dear. Grandma's tired.
yeah, that's my presentation. I hope you guys enjoyed my progress.
Thank you, Anna. And I now invite Leila and Taro to make a response.
Leila, please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Anna, for sharing the animation. You know, I know animation is a lot of work. So if nothing else is clear here, it's your attention to detail. And I love your focus in combining the digital and the tactile here. It's really gorgeous, the combination of your crochet and the more digital animation style. And you know, a lot of filmmakers now are leaning into that sort of experimental, like mixing animation with live action, and even putting different styles of animation and live action together within the same film. One of my favorite examples of that is Terrence Nance's oversimplification of her beauty. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but that's something that I show often especially to my students who are interested in animation. So I highly recommend that. I really, really loved the title design using crochet. I thought that was brilliant. I personally have never seen crochet title design, and I think, you know, being experimental with typographic design is, I don't know, really a really good way to enhance the world. It really brings you into the world that you're creating with this animation. And I appreciated you showing your sketchbook as a part of the process, because I know as an animator, you know, showing character development is really, really important. I'm really curious, like, how you develop your characters and what the characters are based on more so. And if you're, even though you're not interested in a lot of dialogue, how you shape the dialogue and how you craft characters based on a language.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
And okay, thank you. Anna, thank you so much, and congratulations. And it's quite interesting because yeah, as Leila said, you know, animation is really a time-consuming process. And the theme of this final work, thesis work you're trying to create is about time as well. You know, how time flies, and but also animation making is the construction of time, right? So that kind of interesting, the balance between what you're doing is being the making of time, and and also the topic is kind of like a not losing time, but how fast and how it's actually in our dream or in some specific mental state, time flies so fast. So the topic, this balance between the topic and also this kind of like the medium itself, construction of time, is really interesting. And also combination of, this is what Leila said also, but the combination of digital and this crochet and all kind of craft work is really amazing. And I naturally started thinking about like a Brothers Quay or Jan Schwankmeyer, how they started combining stop motion animation with the live figure, and how shocking it was. So your work also probably will shock us in one way or another because of this combination of digital and the really manual labor we can see through the stop motion. So yeah, I'm curious to know more about, if we have time, like how, Anna, you think about, you know, how you can really kind of integrate that two different worlds together. If I can hear more about it, Anna.
So my idea behind integrating, the 3D world versus the stop motion world was to represent two different aspects of reality. So you have the waking life and then you have the dream state. So the dream state is the stop motion and then the waking life is the 3D. That's kind of how I was envisioning and envisioning of combining the two. And then obviously I'm gonna edit it more. This is super rough. I'm currently in the process of rendering, and rendering one shot alone has taken me 40 hours. So it's definitely like super time consuming. But once I get all of this stuff rendered and edited into the final film and the final product, it's definitely going to be combined in a way where it's going to show that it's a different form of reality. And I'm super, super excited to start dabbling on that.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna. Congratulations. And this brings us to our final presenter, Frankie, Yuan.
Yes, I am. One sec. Share my screen. And okay. Hi, my name is Frankie or Jiayang Yuan, and my major is Individualized Studies. And I'm gonna go ahead to read my artist statement and introduce some of my early works and some current practice. Everything is in everything. In everything, I like to play hard and use different media to create some kind of language to express true feelings, so I can establish perceptual dialogue and connections with myself and others. While exploring the possibilities of nonverbal dialogue, I'm also trying to find answers to heal myself and gain a sense of belonging and freedom. I like to cooperate my curiosity with primitive impulses, wildness, and things in the mundane. The spontaneity of little things that happen every day is fascinating for me. Throughout my practice, I also like to communicate about nuanced phenomena around our life. Overall, I just hope to get joy through my creativity and set a reason for my existence. So talking about my influence, there are some artists that I like. Bruce Nauman, Julie Chicago, and Pippi Lottie Wrist. But I feel like I get inspired more about the things in daily life. For example, cartoons, some operas, and the Yellow River posters, crafts, and like some photos and like signs on the street, and yeah, things like that. And here are some of my early works. This is a series of photos I took in 2018. It's called The Granny Who Lives in the Basement. And so I dressed up this character and took self-portraits on street with the abandoned objects, or like in the abandoned around abandoned places. Like this is used to be a military place. And here's a sculpture I made in 2018. It's made by bicycle wheel and some new light stripes. I was thinking about numerology and human beliefs in like mystery things. And here's a screenshot of a video I made in 2019. I call it the unknown blessing. And I've been collecting all the bank letters I've received since I came to the US, but I never opened them. And since I moved to a lot of different places and they have different addresses on them, and I'm still practicing how do I create works with those bank letters. But for this piece, I typewrote a poem in Bible on those letters. And Bible is an influence for me personally because I grew up with my grandma, and she's a Christian, and so I always feel like I have this. I always feel like I'm blessed for some reason, even I don't really know about Christianity. And this is a performance I did in 2019. It's called Playhouse, and I was peeing by standing up and by these fake peanuts, and trying to talk about this gender-related behavior and my gender cognition. And another performance I did called polytraining, and yeah, I was trying to talk about it's related to my last piece. I'm talking about this gender-related behavior. It's funny, I didn't mean to it, but a lot of my pieces are related to pee. This is another piece I did. It's a petri dish, and I took the sample of my pee, and it grew, some pink bacteria grew from it, and I thought it was really fascinating. And this is one of my practice that I still thinking what the outcome will be. This is so all the text were the data I scrape from Pornhub, and by typing the keyword Asian. And so I made this word cloud, and the biggest size of the word is the most often searched word on the website. And the data scraping is like really interesting topic for me, because we all know that not everything is about data, and we are constantly being scraped for sure, like how we are target for marketing, and they can precisely send us advertisements and things like that. So I think it's an interesting practice, and it's important to know this tool, but instead of like utilizing it for things like marketing, we can also make something else by utilizing it. And this is a series of photos. I didn't intentionally want to make it as my practice, but I found it was interesting afterwards. I call it a field study at Strawberry Hill, and it was in Golden Gate Park. And so I basically just use this frame and my phone to take photos of this place, and also the camera of my computer. And this happened. This happened after the pandemic, and so being outside and thinking about like because we are constantly sitting in front of computer, and I guess I was trying to talking about like our relationship with nature and like computer, or for those photos I was thinking about instead of like framing things and make things perfect as an artist, maybe sometime I like to choose like unframing things and show more information. And this is one of my most recent work. It's a performance and about 20 minutes. No dialogue, and I was sitting there basically just taping the I printed a bunch of images of masks and cut them, and so through the performance I tape the masks on my face one by one, and it was like 12 of them. And after doing that, I started to leak the paper masks, and until you can see this one here, the mask is already get a little bit damp. And so until I leak through, my tongue gets through all the masks, and then I spit on the camera, and that's a performance. And from this performance, I wanted to talk about like I hope it's obvious, like our life, how our life changed after pandemic, and this by like interacting with this the most symbolic object that we like we can get rid of still. And the mask is supposed to like protect our health, but at the same time it prevents us from breathing heavily easily, and it creates more distance for a bit like between us, and it makes us to less likely speak up somehow, at least for me. So I wanted to bring the dialogue around that. And here's the last work I want to show, and the work I've been working on and still trying to finish up. So this semester I'm taking a textile class, and I tried block printing, but for me it's more like a stamp printing, because I made the stamp and I just like put ink on it and just stamp them on the fabric. And this is a sample I made, and I was really into it. And this one is emojis, SOS. I'm really into emoji because I think it's kind of a language, especially for like our generation. And so from this, I wanted to make a giant print by stamping stamping them on fabric, but creating a sentence. So this is my drawing, and this is I finished the printing part, and this is two of them, and I don't know what exactly the size, but this picture can give you a sense of how big it is. And that's all my work. And at last, Thank you all. And I have a small request. That is that like I still haven't got my CC ID yet, and because I uploaded this photo and they haven't approved it, but I told them it was our practice, but they said they still didn't get it approved. So I hope I can get help, and I wish I can print this photo on my student ID. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Frankie. Now we'd like to hear from both Leila and Taro about Frankie's presentation.
Okay, can I start? Okay, Frankie, this ID thing is so funny, and so in a way, because after I looked through your work, it was also kind of heartbreaking too. So your work is always kind of at this really intellectual, funny sometimes, but also very heartbreaking too, because heartbreaking, I'm not necessarily saying it in a negative way. And one of the sentences, actually the final sentence of your artist statement says, whatever you were doing to set a reason of my existence. That sentence, what kind of struck me so much. And I think I'm doing my work to set the reason of my existence also, but I had never set this way. So, and then after hearing that sentence and then seeing all the works you presented, and kind of somehow it makes all the work really, really, I feel personally connected, but also this started seeing this weird balance between humanizing yourself in this dehumanizing environment. For example, like this, then that bank statement letter work started making sense because machine keeps sending that letter to us. And somehow you need to respond to it because it's so dehumanizing because we need to just handle these machines all the times. And I can see that that structure in other works also in an amazing way, kind of like a kind of somehow reframing what you're doing, or try to find yourself through this technological mediation of the image of female body, or and masking, and somehow you cover yourself, something that limits your ability, but try to find yourself by licking it and then tear the mask and then spit. It's amazingly heartbreaking in a way. That's the situation we are living in. And you amazingly kind of represent our position, and also your cry of around your existence and kind of suffering from the environment or the social limitation that you're living in, and etc. etc. So it was so moving. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Taro.
Thank you, Frankie, for the presentation. The idea at the end was very unexpected, but it very much is it's like perfect punctuation to everything that you showed, because just from what I like, from all of your different approaches, that ID was very powerful to end on, because it's a lot of your work is about deciphering and breaking systems, from what I understand. And I really enjoy the openness of your practice, because it's a practice of discovery and it's observational. And it's a practice that isn't limited by approach or methodology. And the work is strong because the focus and the subject influences the product or the outcome. And, you know, you started by saying that you wanted to, or you're interested in creating a language. And at first I thought, wow, that's very, very vague, but it makes so much sense because you have this emphasis on signs and symbology. And I think what you're doing is making like you're creating a language through an amalgamation of all these different languages by trying to understand yourself and deciphering your place in the world through the exploration of belonging. And belonging itself can be very cryptic. So I love that as, I don't know, an approach or a theoretical concept for this work. And it's evidenced in the ways that you're trying to understand your body on a microbiological level and the bacteria it produces. You're trying to decipher the language of biblical text and your relationship to Christianity. And all of that is just as cryptic as belonging. And so to me, you have a practice that won't end because you won't ever find answers to these things. And I love that this will be something that you chase forever, essentially. And to me, that's less heartbreaking and more motivating. Questions always motivate me. And you said you think emojis are language. Emojis are definitely language. It's pictorial language, emojis, GIFs, and you know, everything that you're doing is creating a language. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leila. Thank you, Taro. So that brings us to the end of the evening, and I would just like to make a brief comment about what just took place. And to use Taro's word, I think all of this is very moving because of the kind of the scope of the questioning that is taking place on the part of students. I mean, this is very much a part of contemporary art in general, but it's happening in a very deep way at CCA. And it's part of, like, for myself as a faculty member, why this is such an engaging activity, and including teaching itself, because it's just an ordinary, another day at CCA, an ordinary kind of mode of making conversation around questions of culture, that the philosophical is brought up, the psychological is brought up, and that the political is present as well. So that all of these like expansive and very deep human questions are brought right into the center of ordinary conversations when talking about art in general, and then talking about students' work. And I just love that. To me, there's no other place in the culture where these conversations can happen so fully and so fluidly. And then just to kind of like add another dimensionality to it, that all of these conversations are taking place in the midst of, you know, global political instability, climate change, and then COVID. So there is this like intense kind of pressure on these conversations and on the people who participate in them to be reflective and to be open, and then to be responsive in a very full way to these deeply problematic situations. I mean, there's so many other things that could be brought up as well, as questions around racial reckoning and you know, all the other kind of like really important and poignant issues of this moment in time. So I guess I would like to say thank you to all of the students who participated tonight, and who and to the community of students at CCA for showing such courage to come and engage in these kinds of conversations in such a full way. And it's a conversation that's taking place on a global scale with great diversity finally at CCA, and that makes these conversations all the more important. So thank you very much for coming to witness these presentations to the audience, and to especially the parents and the friends and family members who are here tonight to see the presentations by these students. So I think we should have a moment where we applaud the students. And would you please unmute your microphones and give thanks to these students for their work and their ideas.
Great job, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you all. Thank you all for coming. Much appreciated. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. And thank you again.
And thanks to Taro and to Leila for their
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks,
again.
everybody.
Thank you so much.
Everyone.
Congratulations,
All of your
everyone.
reflections.
Well done. Thank you.